PFF sent out a tweet yesterday that read, "Building a perfect AFC South team using our unit rankings." And what they did was they ranked every team in the division at each of the position groups. So the position groups were quarterback, running back, wide receiver core, which I assume they didn't have tight end listed, so I assume they're just kind of putting pass catchers in that group. Offensive line, defensive line, linebacker, secondary, pockets. Every team, have you seen this list, by the way?
I have not.
Every team shows up on the rankings at least one time. It's not required, but they all show up on the list, on the rankings at least one time. How many spots do you think the Jags take, and which position groups do you think they could lead?
They could lead... And this is just for the NFL or just the
just
division?
The South.
Okay.
So Houston, Indy, and Tennessee.
All right, we got to lead the running back position.
Nope.
Dang. Okay.
That went to Indy.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, Taylor's a stud.
I think everybody's on the C.J. Stroud train.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll take Stroud to be the quarterback.
Yes.
Josh Allen's probably the best pass rusher?
Nope.
Wow.
Nope.
Not a receiver. Evan Ingram probably at tight end.
They just kind of put all the pass catchers in one
Okay,
group.
So he probably wouldn't be the top one.
Yeah, and so
the Jags probably don't have anybody at the top.
They gave that to Houston as a group
for the receivers or the
wide receiver core.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So the Jags probably wouldn't have anybody at the top then.
No. The Jags, the one position group they won was linebacker. Right? And that's more the off-ball linebacker type, and hooray, we know Trent Baalke's going to dominate off-ball linebackers. And it's not that the group's bad. The group's awesome. I like Foye and Devin. They're great. You know, I have no dispute with Jacksonville being at the top of that list within the division. Here's my dispute, if I have one, with this whole group. I get it. Houston's going to be at the top of that list at quarterback. Indianapolis, top of the list at running back. I think that you can have the argument about Taylor versus Etienne at some point, but right now, the whole world is going to have Taylor ahead of Etienne. That's fine. That doesn't bother me all that much. The wide receiver core here in Jacksonville, I think, is going to be pretty good this year, honestly. You know, we just talked to Logs, and he said that he thinks this is going to be the best group that Trevor Lawrence has had the chance to play with. But Houston's group looks like it's going to be really good, right? Like among the top handful of groups in the league, potentially. I get it. So I'm not going to dispute Houston being at the top of that. Offensive line, I wouldn't even consider Jacksonville for that, right? Like it's like, no, I think they can be okay on the offensive line, but I don't think they're going to be the best offensive line in the division. Fine. Giving that to somebody else I have no problem with. Tennessee took down secondary. Again, I don't even think we know enough about what the Jacksonville secondary is going to be to really dispute that at this point because everything is so wide open. Here's where I have an issue with the list that PFF put together. They have Indianapolis as the group on the defensive line, right? And I think you put a lot of weight when you're going to have them as that top group when you have Jacksonville with Trayvon and Josh Hines Allen as your leading rushers there on the edge. That's as good as there is in the division. You know, for your top two edge rushers, I think you got to put a lot of weight on DeForest Buckner, right? And I don't think it's completely unfair for DeForest Buckner to be considered, you know, among the top handful, potentially, of interior defensive linemen in the league. I get it. I was looking at some of the numbers for the other guys along that Indianapolis front. Kwity Paye, last year, Pockets, he had 8.5 sacks. I tell you, Kwity Paye had 8.5 sacks. What kind of season would you say that was?
Decent
Season. What if I told you Kwity Paye had 8.5 quarterback sacks and was credited with 9 quarterback hits? Every time he touched the quarterback went down. Is that an impactful season?
Not the way you put it that way. Because you think that somebody gets 8 sacks and they're probably close to another, 8, 9, 10. But if you get 9 hits and you get 8.5 sacks, that's it's still an impact, but it's not as much of an impact as you would think.
Right. I think the quarterback hits number informs how effective a player he was as a pass rusher to some degree, right? When you compare those numbers to other guys around the league, I think Kwity Paye has the opportunity to be a decent player in the league. But we're talking about comparing whole defensive fronts. We've talked about our expectations on the interior of the Jaguars' defensive line. No, I don't think they have Eric Armstead even that's going to be on the same level as DeForest Buckner. I'm not saying that he is. I'm saying that when you combine Josh Hines-Allen and Trayvon Walker and Eric Armstead, like I think the combination of those three guys, when you compare that to what Indianapolis has, and even if you give Buckner a huge advantage as that interior defensive pass rusher, the other guys, Kwity Paye with his 8.5 sacks on 9 quarterback hits, Grover Stewart, Samson Ebukam, what? That's a better group than Jacksonville has going into the season? Is it even better than what Houston has going into the season? It just caught me a little bit off guard that they had Indianapolis at the top of that list. A lot of the other spots there on that, the rankings didn't bother me at all. I can understand why they'd have the team at the top that they had at the top, but that one got me a little